Hey everybody, it's Joe Trippi, and welcome back to That Trippi Show. This week, yes, we get to what may be the dumbest Veepstakes in history, and it isn't Trump's. Plus, why another GOP stunt backfired badly, and I got a little feisty on Twitter this week. I'll explain why, and some other stuff on social media we'll get into. Alex, where should we get started?
I want to go to that backfired stunt, Joe. I think this one actually takes a little explaining. I know a lot of our listeners will be following it, but it's actually kind of been a while since we talked about any of the investigation after investigation. And one thing, just because of how we record on a Thursday to a Friday and when news broke, we never really got into any of the stuff that the Republican special counsel Robert Hur pointed out that was basically ended up being a sleazy hit job on Joe Biden. But he was summoned for a hearing this week. And I just want to remind, before you get into this stuff, who called that hearing? It wasn't the Democrats. And I think that's what I want you to get into, Joe.
Yeah, these guys, the Republicans, one more time. I mean, they've had nothing all through the whole, not just this, but the impeachment stuff on Biden, where they keep, in the Hunter Biden stuff, where they keep calling witnesses and everybody says didn't happen. And now they call their hero, Hur. It's the Hur fiasco. I mean, he's their guy. They call him. He was a Trump appointee, all that good stuff. And then it turns out, I mean, the thing that really hit me was Swalwell who got him on the transcript that said, where Hur is literally in the transcript saying, geez, you have a photographic memory of the layout of this thing, and is sort of bragging on how good Biden's memory is. And Swalwell says, that's in the transcript? Yeah. Was it in the report? And Hur goes, no. Oh, but the old man stuff was. I mean, it was just a farce. It was unbelievable. And I think Democrats did a really good job in the hearing, immediately, shifting the focus. Also, I mean, that's the other backfire thing. It turned out to be a hearing that the Democrats were holding to shift the focus to Trump's charges and the difference between the Biden case and the Trump case.
That was a lot of Ted Lieu. Yeah, that was really good.
Yeah. There was good. No, all of them did pretty well. And the Republicans just kept, trying to go over the same old ground and then got called on it every time. So the other thing is, and I think you've said this to me, that when the Republicans when you're forcing Republicans to defend Trump, that's a winning argument. It's a winning day. That's a good hearing. And that's exactly what happened.
They wanted their circus. They wanted this to be about Biden. They wanted it to be about the memory stuff. And none of it turned out that way. I mean, it's like, even, by the way, if you look at the coverage of this in a media that is heavily, I mean, it is like a bear trap for Joe Biden. Yeah, anything they cover on the too old stuff. And even the media coverage that the Republicans wanted to get out of this just did not materialize. And it was like all teed up for him. And it was a gigantic swing and a miss.
That's true. But the other side about the media, by the way, is they, I think the New York Times and the Washington Post, just two examples, 57 times ran stories that talked about the old man who, with the faulty memory. Only one, the New York Times, one time has quoted the photographic memory case part of that hearing. Only one. So they continually hyped when the bad news, the bad version, and when the fact comes out, they report it once. This is happening all the time. But I think Greg Sargent said this all best on Twitter. He's quote, "The GOP's impeachment push has devolved into a farce, but this isn't just because the case against Biden is so weak. It's also because the parallel case against Trump is so strong. The GOP stance can't withstand any comparisons," he said. But I mean, that's the fact. It's those comparisons. And I think in the end, we keep talking about the contrast between Trump and Biden, not just in these cases, but obviously, it's going to turn out that life wasn't so great in 2020, and that contrast will come out as well. But you're right, though. It was the GOP's hearing here, and Matt Dowd on Twitter. I don't get why House GOP wanted to have this hearing with her. It went worse for Trump than it did for Biden. These folks couldn't organize a one-person parade. True. Truth, Matt. Matt Dowd, I've been a good, I've always had a lot of respect for him, but he's been calling it straight for quite a while. And one more time, he talks truth there.
It just seems like this is just another example or another in a long litany of data points that whenever the House Republican caucus tries to basically do anything, it just doesn't happen, which we don't really have a place to talk about this today. I'm sure when the ripple effects happen later, but this is why like the Ken Bucks of the world are retiring. Like they want no part of this. I think he said something like, "I'm not going to lie on behalf of Donald Trump." It was pretty powerful. Relatedly, this does make it harder for Lauren Boebert to get reelected, which I thought was kind of funny, but their majority's down to 2. And he hinted that there are more retirements coming. So, I mean, to be fair, the Republicans are going to get the exact number of things done with their own majority as they would with the Democratic majority at this rate. But, we'll see.
No, there's speculation now that Jeffries could be speaker before the end of the year. That could because of the of how messed up the GOP caucus is, because there are going to be more retirements, and how that plays out with specials, et cetera, could actually end up with the Republicans losing their majority before the November election.
Well, and as often as we hear story after story about Joe Biden's approval rating, which, by the way, continues to tick up. We'll get into that in a little bit. It is consistently 4 or 5 times higher than the congressional approval rating, which I think we'll come back later. Joe, you mentioned feisty. I think I'm going to use a different F word here, so cover your ears, listeners. But one of our most common questions was, and again, this was, I think, last Thursday or Friday, you tweeted late last week, "Trump is fucked. What a loser." Joe, everyone wants you to explain this one.
Well, first of all, it read a lot better on Twitter than it does you saying it in our podcast. I'm not sure I would have used that word on the podcast, but he is. I mean, I did that. I think it was in the middle of the State of the Union address.
I think you're right.
And it was because you could just see the realization among all those Republicans, particularly MAGA Mike Johnson, speaker, sitting back there squirming in his chair, that this is not the Joe Biden caricature that they've been building all this time, that they thought they were going to be able to face. Not only that, it was clear they didn't really know how to respond on. In fact, these people, they didn't even applaud when Biden was talking about ending cancer. I mean, like literally finding a cure for cancer they could not get there. That one was the least of them. I just think it made it more obvious. But on every issue that the president was out there on, that they were on the wrong side of, they had to sit there silently, and they were pushed so far into a corner that, like I said, even on the obvious stuff, they couldn't join together with everybody else there and applaud, what would normally be unanimous across the floor. They can't do that, and they can't. And part of it also was the realization that we used to talk about, the Republican Party was the hostages and the hostage takers. They've all given in now. They're all hostage takers now. I mean, they're all held hostage by Trump, and now the speaker's held hostage by the MAGA, cult members. The
vast majority.
Right, and it's increasing, and they're purging. Like, that's what I'm saying. Even the, Ken Buck, all these people, they're leaving. They can't take it anymore, even if they were one of them, even if they were one of the hostage takers or hostages, but they're all leaving, and all that gets left is this group. So it is like, you keep seeing this, but then you lay on top of that, folks, a new Fox News analysis sums this all up. There are 2.9 million voters had voted for Nikki Haley so far. Of them, roughly 60% say they aren't voting for Trump. And by the way, a lot of their reasons are going to be the same reasons those folks on the floor were applauding and why the speaker was squirming. If you look at that case, even if a fraction of them don't vote for Trump, he loses, right? But we've got...
And this was Fox News saying
this is 60% of them. And again, part of it is, if you think about the women who voted for Nikki Haley, many of them troubled by Dobbs, even if she's not, she's just better than Trump on that for those women. But what will they do in the general? I just think in the end, you're starting to see how Trump and the MAGA cult have nowhere to grow. I think Trump's probably happy with that. I think his goal is to just turn out as many MAGA folks as he can. But I think if you're the 17 members who still exist in the Biden won districts, Biden won in 2020, they were in a bad place. And I think that's what I mean. Trump may not get this. He may not get that he's screwed.
Well, but he doesn't care.
Yeah, but he doesn't care. He does. He would care if he understood it, but because otherwise, and I guess this is where I did follow up with, I didn't think I followed up with my tweet saying he's going to jail. I didn't mean he's going to jail because he's going to be one of these trials is going to happen between now and the election and he's going to jail. No. He's screwed because he's going to lose. And when he loses, those trials, even if they happen after the election, will go on, and then he's going to jail. So for him, it's an existential threat.
Well, and I think that's the one piece. I mean, we've said many times, his only way out is winning the presidency and then basically breaking a bunch of laws to make the laws that he did break okay. His motivation to win this thing is incredibly powerful. It's the most powerful of anybody. And he is backed into a corner. And I think you actually saw from the GOP after the State of the Union, I know just because of timing, we didn't really get into this. You saw how they're going to try to just brazen their way through it. It's like the ultimate dog ate my word. Like the Katie Britt response.
Yeah, we didn't even get there.
Everyone has lampooned. Yeah, we haven't gotten there. I saw you tweeted that it took SNL to properly report it because they had Scarlett Johansson make fun of it. But the point was a brazen lie. They knew it was a brazen lie, and they just decided, to hell with it. We're going to do it anyway, and we are going to challenge everyone for reporting on it. And by the way, I would actually argue that the brazen lie worked in this case. They got a ton of coverage right away. It got a ton of stories, and it took like 2 days for an MSNBC contributor to figure out that it was false. And yeah, it got reported on a little bit. But if you look at the lie versus them saying it was a lie, absolutely, the liars won.
Yeah, well, this gets back to the her thing where he says, "Old man can't with faulty memory," says, "Hey, you've got a photographic mind on this." They, repeatedly said the old man stuff, and one time there's been a sight of the photographic. This thing with Katie Britt, are you kidding me? This was beamed in. The response to the State of the Union was beamed in by every network to every home that was following the State of the, that was watching ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, Fox, all of them, MSNBC, everybody. Yeah. Basically SNL and I did tweet this. It took SNL to report the news. To go back and actually make sure millions of Americans saw that it was complete freaking lie. They did it humorously, but and that doesn't mean that then. And actually, it was. Yes, I think it was Saturday Night Live that made, oh, geez, I guess we ought to do something on that. Some of the other, the next day's news, they did like a little, and actually a lot of them, all they did was show the SNL clip, a bit of it, and then talk about how there are questions about what she said. But my point is, this has been the repeated mess that's been happening with the press and journalism throughout. They report what the accusation is by the Republicans. And then when it gets exposed as an out and out lie, they do a one-day story on it. It's, by the way, the same thing. Recession. for like the better part of a year. We're going to be in recession. We're going to be in recession. We're going to be in recession. They never are going to do the repetitive, we're not in a recession, things are great. They're not doing that. So everybody thinks, geez, the economy's bad. And then they go like, why don't people get, why is Biden's approval so low of the economy so good? Well, maybe if you guys stop saying we're about to go into a recession every 15 minutes. But anyway, and report not like once a week when a or once a month when a jobs report comes out, but actually give people the context of what's going on here. Again, every time a Republican asks, are you better, and Katie Britt did this, I think, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? You might want to report, remember that 4 years ago, 1 million people we had a president talking about telling people to use bleach while 500,000 people died in the first 6 months.
That was only 4 years ago. It's crazy.
Yeah. No, but things were great back then. I mean, they were just amazing.
Yeah, right.
Unemployment. I mean, I think unemployment was like at 9% and growing. It was just, But I was just doing so much better that year. Crazy.
Yeah.
But, but getting back to why he's screwed, though, the economy is one of them. People are talking about the new polls, USA Today poll, basically headed it as dead heat. I tweeted again, head-to-head numbers do not matter. The lag closing on economic reality is far more important. And what that poll showed clearly was more Americans were saying the economy's doing better in that poll. It's like it was a 4 or 5 point jump on the economy's strong
and highest it's been in the Biden presidency.
Right. And so that's what I meant. That we've been talking about that lag for a long time, that it would start to show up in polling. Well, the first place it's going to show up is when people say, no, the economy seems like it's going good. That'll move first. The next thing that moves after that, so the first thing is consumer sentiment. The next thing is consumer sentiment moving up actually shows up when people eventually saying, yeah, hey, the economy's doing pretty well. And then, of course, the last thing that moves, the lag, is, gosh, I guess the guy in charge might be better on the economy than I thought. That's not about Joe Biden. It's not me defending him. It's how it's always been, whether it was Reagan, whether it was Obama, whether it was George H.W. Bush, where the consumer sentiment started to move really late, and just barely the economic approval, the people's feeling about where the economy was going was just starting to move, but it was all too late.
It was too late for him.
Too late for him. He loses because the lag, when you're in that situation, when you're running a campaign or you're in a presidential campaign, I can't tell you how many times you're sitting there just hoping that lag, happens in time, or in Clinton's case, doesn't happen in time for your opponent. And then guess who benefits when people start to realize the economy has turned and you're the new president of the United States, voila, everybody thinks it's you. So, maybe it's not this isn't about fairness. It's not about partisanship. It's just the reality. When you're looking at these polling numbers, don't look at that head to head. Look at what's moving underneath. And if you look at that, it's what we've been saying all along, Alex, that the weight of the economy and the weakness in the economy coming out of COVID has pulled Biden down. It's one of the reasons his approval rating's so low. That weight is going to get lighter and lighter and lighter. We're starting to see it. So why is Trump screwed? All the reasons we talked about, the 2.9 million voters who voted for Nikki Haley so far, 60% of them saying they're not going to vote for him. By the way, that's 2.9 million people who got to vote in primaries. They're over now. But in all those other states, no, there's no people that would have voted for Nikki and also said they weren't going to vote for Trump. It's much bigger than 2.9 million people. My point is that the weight that's been holding Biden down is going to lift, and the things that stop Trump from raising his ceiling, they're getting heavier. So in the end, that's why I'd rather be us and him, why I think he's screwed, and why I think in the end, whether those trials happen now or afterwards, obviously if they happen afterwards and he wins, he's not going to jail. He's going to pardon himself, or he's not going to pay any fine, any of that stuff. The problem will be the reason I followed up with that, retweeted myself or quote tweeted or whatever I did, I can't remember, replied to myself and said he's going to jail is because there was no secret, oh my gosh, I know something, one of these things is going to happen before the election. No, I just meant it means he's going to lose and therefore he's got real problems.
Yeah. I mean, we'll move on, but a few other quick nuggets that found interesting. In that same USA Today poll, this actually was one of the first things I saw that everyone keeps saying third parties, big problem for Joe Biden. They are. But there is a real path for him to win some of these people back. Quote from that USA Today poll, most of those now backing a third party candidate said they were open to changing their minds. Among them, 75% of RFK supporters and 94% of Jill Stein supporters. That signals the potential erosion that independent candidates often see as election day nears. And we've talked about this at length. Voters often right now throw out an alternative because they think it for whatever reason, they're not confronted with the reality that it's just not going to happen. You saw that with the uncommitted protest votes. But ultimately, there is ground for, and you talked about this last week about how Joe Biden could do this, but there is an ability for the president to make up some significant ground. Meanwhile, this is more of a procedural thing, but basically all the professionals at the RNC just got fired and replaced by a bunch of Charlie Kirk loyalists. My favorite thing, and this is so petty, but I love it. I know Laura Trump's now the co-chair of the RNC. All the professionals just got fired. But the funny part, and George Conway tweeted this, she sent this text out asking for $12.15 as a donation to, and again, she's totally fine paying her father-in-law's legal bills. $12.15 basically pays, I think it's like 7 or 8 seconds, according to George, of how much interest that accrues every day, which is just extremely funny.
It was a George Conway tweet that did that made that point. The $12.15 gets you like 7.8 seconds of interest paid off Trump's judgments. But so hurry up, people. Send your $12.15 in, and because the next 8 seconds are going quickly here, and you could pay for it. Yeah, it's insane. But also on your other question though about the other question though, the point you made about the third parties, and 75% of Robert Kennedy Jr.'s folks and 94% of Jill Stein supporters being open to changing their minds. That's true. It's another trail of crumbs that, Nikki Haley, somebody, I think it was Brownstein, said that she was leaving a trail of breadcrumbs for Biden to follow to victory with her voters. I think these third parties are ripe. Some of them are people that Biden can go after. That doesn't mitigate the danger, though, of those third-party candidates, because you're only talking about 2-3% in the battleground states, changing the outcome in those states and helping deliver Trump. But I do think but it's actually those numbers point out why it's so important to get the third parties not to do this, because most of those voters would be people that would move to Biden. And help defeat Trump, because you don't want to split up the pro-democracy side of things here.
So you mentioned third party. I mentioned crazy. Let's go to the weirdest of them all. RFK Jr. has announced that he selected his running mate. It's going to be announced, I think, next weekend. Doesn't really matter. But we get a ton of questions about the Veepstakes. Every single week, someone either asks, should we replace Kamala Harris, or who's Trump's VP going to be? I know you just recently covered the Trump side of things, which, by the way, he announced this like crazy fantasy land where he was going to try to find a moderate woman, or it leaked that he was going to try to find a moderate woman to try to shore up his weaknesses on abortion. That's nuts. But the real
Nikki
thing
Haley,
is
right?
RFK.
He's going to pick Nikki, right?
Yeah.
Come on. Yeah. Okay.
RFK Jr., his apparent top pick. This one, it came out of left field a little bit, and then you start reading about what a terrible person he is, and then you realize it makes total sense. Aaron Rodgers, Joe. Yeah. What the hell?
Well, Jesse Ventura, too. He's got 2. Aaron Rodgers. Well, it's the anti-vax ticket for sure, but it just again points up how crazy the unserious the
Yeah.
RFK Jr. candidacy is. I don't know what I mean. The thing that worries me about that crazy idea is, even the Jesse Ventura, is what impact it would have in Wisconsin or Minnesota. I know people go like, no, everybody hates Aaron Rodgers after how he bailed and went with the Jets, but again, you're still talking about 3-4 points there, and so laugh. I do too. I think it's absolutely crazy, but it will prove how unserious he is. But I'm not sure it doesn't have an impact, because just one state like that helping to deliver votes to Trump, or to the key people keep going, well, maybe it'll all help Trump. No, I mean, maybe it'll help Biden. No, what's going on is no one comes off Trump. The people who are for Trump, they don't move. They don't come off of him. People who support RFK, well, 75% say, hey, I'll think about somebody else. Stein, 90-something%, I'll think about somebody else. Biden may only have 20% or 8% that say that, but it's all from these people who fervently don't think we should have an autocracy, even if if you agree with Robert Kennedy on some issues. You're splitting up the pro-democracy vote, and as crazy as a RFK Jr. Aaron Rodgers ticket might sound, and I still have a hard time believing even Aaron Rodgers would do that, but hey, what the hell? You're right. I still think that is a threat that needs to be taken seriously, not seriously at all in any chance of being president, but seriously that it's out to wreck the election and be a spoiler for Trump. And I think in Rodgers' case, that's definitely what he'd be up to. RFK Jr. may just be, on an ego trip, but Aaron Rodgers, I think, would probably be out to help Trump.
So, talk about one thing that might wreck the election. Joe, I want to finish with this. Weird week on social media.
Yeah.
You had the Don Lemon thing.
Yeah.
You had, I think now Steve Mnuchin says he wants to buy TikTok. So,
yeah,
Joe, what's worse there?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, the Elon Musk thing with Don Lemon is just, I mean, that's all predictable stuff. I mean, Don Lemon's going to launch a show on X. Let's do a 90-minute interview with Elon Musk. They do the interview. Don Lemon asks some questions about hate speech and other,
ketamine.
Yeah, ketamine. And, when I first saw this on Twitter, I was like, what? Don interviewed Donald Trump? Because it sounded like, it was like he interviewed a toddler and asked him about ketamine. And I went like, oh man, did Don do, interview Donald Trump? No, it was Elon Musk. But then, of course, predictably, Elon Musk, sent the Don Lemon's folks a Tears contract terminated, and that's a quote, contract terminated, unquote, was the only thing that he sent, and pulled Don Lemon off X, the show off X before it's going to air. I don't know, although it's getting some coverage on cable. We'll see, but that's nuts. But the kind of nuts on X that we're now all used to. The weird one is TikTok, because now America and the Senate and others have to ask themselves this question: what would be worse, if TikTok's owned by the Chinese or owned by former Trump Treasury Secretary Mnuchin? Because that's, the new news is Mnuchin's has made an offer or is making a bid to buy TikTok. And that's like a pretty crazy dilemma. I think at least with China owning it, what they're doing, what they're trying to undermine democracy, et cetera. And then that they're trying to, collect data and manipulate opinion. But I think I'd rather have that than Mnuchin, some Trump guy, another Elon Musk, another the right, the alt-right, the crazy right owning another big something like TikTok with that kind of influence, and the algorithms all pointing people to, like, throttling some speech and promoting other speech, all for the political gain. Here, at least with China, that everybody should know they may be using it to undermine us. I'm not sure people would have that same if they thought it was owned by an American company. And Mnuchin would bother me more. But that's just me. We have to really keep track of that, and who knows how it'll turn out.
Joe, that's a great place for us to end today. We're just about out of time.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to That Trippi Show. This podcast will always be free with support from our advertisers as part of Resolute Square. Check out the latest at resolutesquare.com/Trippi. Please subscribe to That Trippi Show and leave a review on Apple or wherever you listen. You can always send us a question to thattrippishow@gmail.com or leave us a question and a review on iTunes. This week, we went to number 74 on the Apple Podcast chart for politics. Every once in a while, we get up there, and thank you for helping us get there. Spread the word, get others to listen, and we'll see you next week.
Resolute Square.